They say hard work is the master key to every door. But what happens when you've turned the key 1,000 times and the lock hasn't moved an inch? What happens when your hands are blistered, your back is broken, and your spirit is depleted, yet you are still standing exactly where you started? If you feel like you are running a race where the finish line keeps moving further away, you aren't lazy and you aren't cursed. You are simply looking at the soil, but you haven't seen the roots. Deep in a valley where the sun hits the earth like a hammer, there lived a man named Elias. Elias was not a man of words, he was a man of sweat. He owned a small, jagged piece of land that everyone else had abandoned years ago. They called it the Ghost Acre because nothing grew there. But Elias believed in the gospel of effort. He believed that if he outworked every soul in the valley, the earth would eventually have no choice but to yield. Every morning, while the moon was still hanging in the sky, Elias was in his field. He didn't just walk, he marched. He swung his pickaxe with a rhythm that sounded like a heartbeat against the stone. When his neighbors planted wheat and corn, Elias planted something different. He had traveled far to get seeds for the Great Cedar, a tree known to be the strongest, tallest, and most valuable in the world. He was told that one of these trees could provide for a family for a lifetime. The first year, Elias worked like a demon. He hauled water from the river 3 miles away, balancing heavy wooden buckets on a yoke that bruised his shoulders. He pulled every weed by hand. He talked to the dirt. He prayed. At the end of the year, his neighbors harvested their corn. They had food, they had profit, and they had rest. Elias had nothing, not a single green sprout, not a leaf, just dry, brown dirt. His neighbors laughed. They told him he was a fool for working so hard on a lie. But Elias just wiped the sweat from his eyes and said, "The sun saw my work today. The earth will remember." The second year came. Elias doubled his efforts. He started waking up an hour earlier. He began carrying 3 buckets of water instead of 2. He spent his nights sharpening his tools by a dim candle. He was the hardest working man in the valley, perhaps in the world. People started using him as a warning to their children. "Don't be like Elias," they whispered. "He works for a ghost." By the end of the second year, the neighbors harvested their crops again. Elias's field remained a graveyard of dust. There was no sign of life. By the third year, the toll began to show. Elias's hair turned gray. His hands were so calloused he could no longer feel the heat of a coal. He was exhausted. Not the kind of exhaustion you sleep off in a night, but the kind that lives in your marrow. He sat on a rock one evening, looking at his barren field. He felt a crushing weight in his chest. He had done everything right. He had sacrificed his youth, his social life, and his comfort. He had outworked everyone. Why was he the only one failing? He felt like the universe was playing a cruel joke on him. He looked at his neighbors' lush green fields and felt a flicker of bitterness. They didn't work half as hard as he did. They took breaks, they slept in, yet they were rewarded while he was punished. He grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it, screaming into the empty valley. "Is it not enough? When is it enough?" The fourth year was a test of the soul. Elias was starving. He had to sell his furniture just to buy water for a field that gave him nothing back. He was a skeleton of a man. Every swing of the axe felt like it would be his last. He was failing in the eyes of the world. He was a failure in his own mirror. But deep inside, a tiny, quiet voice told him that if he stopped now, the last 3 years would truly be a waste. If he quit today, the only thing he would leave behind was a story of a man who gave up. So he kept digging. He kept watering the empty, silent ground. Then came the 5th year. One Tuesday morning, Elias walked out to the field with his head low. He didn't expect anything anymore. It was just a habit now, a habit of a man who refused to die. But as the sun began to peek over the mountains, he saw something, a tiny silver-green needle poking through the crust of the earth. He fell to his knees. He thought it was a mirage. He touched it with a trembling finger. It was real. Within 24 hours, that tiny sprout grew 3 feet. Within a week, it was taller than Elias. Within a month, the Great Cedar was 20 feet high, its trunk thickening with a speed that defied nature. The entire valley gathered to watch. They had never seen anything like it. What Elias didn't know, what you don't realize while you're struggling, was what was happening underground during those 4 years of perceived failure. While the neighbor's corn was growing shallow roots that would die in the first drought, Elias's cedar was spending 4 years building a massive subterranean foundation. It was sending roots hundreds of feet deep into the earth, wrapping themselves around the bedrock, searching for the hidden aquifers that never run dry. The tree wasn't failing to grow, it was preparing to tower. It needed those 4 years of silence to build the strength required to support its massive height. If it had sprouted in the first year, it would have toppled over in the first wind. You see, your hard work is never wasted. It is being banked. You are in your underground phase. You are looking at the surface and seeing nothing, so you think you are failing. But you are not failing. You are grounding. You are building the character, the resilience, and the foundation that your future success will require. The person who succeeds quickly often loses it just as fast because their roots are thin. But the person who struggles, who toils in silence, who watches others pass them by while they stay consistent, that person is building a cedar. When your breakthrough finally arrives, it won't be a small harvest. It will be a transformation that lasts a lifetime. Do not compare your first year to someone else's 10th. Do not compare your root-building season to someone else's harvest season. The earth is not ignoring you. The universe is not blind to your sweat. It is simply waiting for your foundation to be strong enough to hold the weight of the greatness you asked for. If you are tired, learn to rest, not to quit. The growth is coming, and when it breaks the surface, it will happen faster than you ever imagined. Keep watering the ground. Your time in the dark is almost over.